When we picture the Industrial Revolution, we imagine a complete override, green fields and quiet villages swallowed whole by towering smokestacks and endless brick factories. The standard historical narrative tells us that ancient farming populations were uprooted. People who had worked the land for centuries moved to expanding urban centers, trading their localized, generational identities for roles in mass manufacturing. But of course, history rarely operates in absolutes. In the remote corner of northern England, one isolated township successfully defied this narrative of erasure. This hand-drawn map shows the township of Stannington, a rugged settlement just 3 miles from industrial Sheffield. The steep drops of the river Loxley and river Rivelin, marked here in blue, were perfect for powering the grinding wheels of the booming cutlery trade. As the industry expanded out from the city, new factories sprang up along the riverbanks, bringing a massive influx of migrant workers. By all conventional logic, the original farming community should have been displaced. Yet the historical records reveal a solid block of local inhabitants, a network of core families who stayed put for generation after generation, absorbing the shock of modernization. Stannington's survival challenges our assumptions about progress. It forces us to ask what actually keeps a community intact when the physical landscape around it is transformed. The rough terrain isolating Stannington bred a population accustomed to fending for themselves and resisting outside authority. Look at the title page of this 1662 Book of Common Prayer. That year, the English government passed the Act of Uniformity, legally demanding that all local ministers conduct their worship strictly by this book and submit to the Church of England. The people of Stannington refused. When their minister wouldn't conform, the community protected ejected dissenting clergy and eventually built their own independent meeting house, the Underbank Chapel. Long before the first heavy machinery arrived, this township had already forged a cultural immune system. They knew how to exist on the fringe and resist top-down control. That resilience was tested in the mid-18th century. As the local cutlery trade boomed, the ancient oak woodlands along the Loxley and Rivelin valleys were chopped down and rapidly replaced by water-powered grinding wheels and forges. This infrastructure required immense labor. Migrant workers poured into the valleys to man the wheels and dig the new coal and ganister mines, triggering a population spike that dwarfed the original settlement. The British government even tried to anchor this exploding demographic using the Million Act, a public fund used to build standardized, imposing structures like Christchurch to instill order in chaotic new industrial zones. By the early 1800s, state-funded churches and heavy urban industry were pressuring every single inch of Stannington's traditional landscape. How did the original families keep from drowning in this flood? They survived by being versatile. These families navigated the change by layering new industrial trades directly onto their agricultural roots. Instead of abandoning the land, locals integrated into the new economy. As we see in photographs of early rural laborers, these families maintained their small farming plots while also forging, grinding, and pressing razors. By tracing parish registers and local militia lists, historians found that these core families maintained their grip on local stability, consistently holding public office and steering the township's administration. This stability was bolstered by social absorption. Historical demographic data shows that while people moved for work, they usually stayed within a 10-mile radius, their local country. The deep-rooted families intermarried with the newcomers, pulling the migrants into their established way of life. The core families integrated the new population, using marriage and local customs to absorb newcomers into the established country. Eventually, the era of water-powered mills came to an end. The rise of steam engines rendered the river valleys obsolete, and heavy industry consolidated back into the urban center of Sheffield. The final physical transformation of the landscape was aquatic. Massive reservoirs were constructed to feed the growing city, flooding the ancient valleys and plunging many of the old mill sites underwater. By the 20th century, the expanding city limits of Sheffield finally reached the hills, legally absorbing the township into the greater metropolitan area. On a macro-level map, the independent rural community of Stannington had officially ceased to exist. But macro history rarely captures the reality of the people living on the ground. Despite losing their physical borders, their forests, and their traditional industries, the descendants of those core farming families remained. They provided a continuous, stable thread that carried the community's identity right through the industrial flood. The story of Stannington proves that industrialization doesn't require the death of local identity. It shows how a deeply rooted social network can absorb massive economic shifts while maintaining its own internal continuity.